Remember the smallest twins in the world? You won't believe what happened to them. It's amazing how much emotion can be conveyed in a simple touch. When you're down and out, something as simple as a hand on the shoulder, a hug, or quietly holding hands can have a profound effect. And 20 years ago, a simple touch carried with it a huge miracle for twin sisters Kyrie and Brielle. Brielle and Kyrie Jackson were born premature on October 17, 1995. They were born 12 weeks before their due date. Both girls weighed only about 900 grams. Doctors in the intensive care unit of the Massachusetts Medical Center, according to current rules, place newborns in separate incubators. The father of his daughters, Paul Jackson, talks about these most difficult moments in his life. The doctors were very honest with us. We were told that things could change very quickly in the next 2 to 3 days, for the worse, and things really started to change. After 3 weeks, one of the babies started having problems. The situation was critical. Briella's arms and legs turned blue and she began to choke. Her heart rate increased sharply and the oxygen in her blood began to decrease. Her family was preparing for the worst, that the baby would not survive. The medical team tried everything to stabilize the situation, but nothing worked. Nurse Gail Kasparian wasn't ready to give up. She asked for parental permission to try something that was against hospital regulations in the U.S., but was being practiced in Europe. With permission, she moved Kyrie into the same incubator next to her struggling sister. What happened next made history, and is still being talked about today. That's when Nurse Gail Kasparian came up with the idea to get her parents' permission to place Carrie in the same incubator with her sister Briella. This procedure was not being used in the United States. The parents did not have time to think about the risks of possible infection, so they agreed. Gail placed Carrie in the same crib where her sister was fighting for her life. And then a miracle happened. Briella crawled to her sister and her heartbeat began to return to normal. After a few minutes, her condition generally began to stabilize. As Briella began to fall asleep, her sister placed her left hand on her shoulder, and her body temperature rose to normal. Brielle snuggled closer to her sister, and a miracle took place. Almost instantly, Brielle's heart rate slowed to normal, and she began to stabilize. Her oxygen levels, which had been dangerously low, leveled out, and she began to breathe more easily. Photographer Chris Christo of the Worcester Telegram and Gazette just so happened to be at the hospital and took the now famous photo of what's often called the life-saving hug between the twin girls. From there on out, Brielle continued to get better. Once the hospital released them, their parents continued to keep the girls in the same bed, even 5 years later. Kyrie hugs Briella. The photo became Photo of the Year, taken by reporter Chris Christo, who appeared to be in the hospital that day. This decision to bring the children together saved Briella's life. After these events, the parents kept their children in the same crib at home, and little Briella's condition continued to improve. The parents admitted that even after 5 years, the children were still sleeping in the same crib. This beautiful hug from Kyrie attracted the attention of not only the media, but also influenced practical medicine for prematurely newborn twins, triplets, and quadruplets. It became commonplace practice to place all children in one incubator. The heartwarming photo was shared on the internet and was featured in Life magazine and Reader's Digest. But in addition to stirring hearts everywhere, the twins' story also had an impact on the medical field, giving new credence to the power of touch. The University of Massachusetts Memorial put roughly 100 sets of premature multiples, i.e. twins, triplets, etc., into the same incubator, and not one single case of infection in the newborns was reported. Kangaroo care, a method of prolonged skin-to-skin contact with moms or primary caregivers, is used in many labor and delivery units these days. As for the twins, they are now 20 years old and preparing to graduate from college. Naturally, they're still very close and still embracing, saying that when one of them is sad, the other will give a hug. And now that you know just how much power there is in touch, look around to see if you know someone who could use a hug. Since then, doctors have delivered more than 100 pairs of premature babies in one incubator, and no infection, which in theory was so feared, has ever been reported. Carrie's hug proved to the adult world how important skin-to-skin contact is after childbirth. Another survived story. When an Ontario mother went into labor 21 weeks and 5 days early, she and her husband were told there was no possibility their newborn twins would survive. Despite the medical odds of siblings, Adia and Adriel Nataraja, born 126 days earlier than expected, the teensy twosome survived, becoming the world's most premature set of twins, as per Guinness World Records. Adia was born weighing only 330 grams, while her brother weighed 420 grams, making the premature twins a combined 1.65 pounds. Though a full-term pregnancy is usually 40 weeks, mother Shakina Rajadrem began labor before the twins were considered viable. At 21 weeks and 5 days pregnant, Rajanadrem said she awoke in the night to extreme pain, contractions, and bleeding. She and her husband, Kevin Nataraja, feared they would lose the pregnancy. They traveled to hospital for treatment. We were in shock. The first thought that ran through my mind was, no, not again. Rajadrim told Guinness. Half an hour before midnight on the 153rd day, Rajadrim falsely thought her water broke. She said she cried and apologized to her husband, saying the babies were going to die because of me. After doctors informed Rajadrem that her water had not broken, she went back to sleep and woke at 12:15 a.m. the next day when she started to give birth. The twins received treatment and survived, though the first few months were spent battling for their lives. After nearly 6 months, the twins were discharged from hospital and allowed to go home. Be brave to stand up and advocate for what your babies need, she said.